This conference will now be recorded.
Great. Okay, so I'm going to also open up my screen so we can see what's going on in here. So welcome to the Technology Review Council, and thank you all for joining us today. We have the privilege, the pleasure, and probably the first time for us to be using an avatar-based three-dimensional virtual reality created by Mr. Danny Stefanik, a gentleman I met through LinkedIn, got an opportunity to talk with him, was invited to the environment very similar to this, actually his office overlooking a beautiful scenery, and have just absolutely been enthralled with this environment and what it is. So Danny, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us, and tell us a little bit about you, if you will, LearnBrite, how long you've been doing this, and if you will, what LearnBrite is offering today for people in this kind of 3D avatar environment. And then we'll just kind of play, if you will.
Yeah, sure. That'd be my pleasure. And thanks for inviting me in to present today. As you mentioned before the call, I'm currently kind of bunkered down in Spain while things pass over. And it's good to be able to do these kind of online demonstrations and chats, and it keeps things moving, and it's quite entertaining at the same time. So I'll start with just a little bit of background on who I am and where I've come from. I'm actually a veteran of VR for over 25 years and have been building VR companies even pre-internet. So I've been tinkering with that technology for a very long time and started the International Virtual Reality Association back in 1994. So I've been doing it for a few years and have created a number of world firsts on the internet, including 360 panoramic viewers that you've probably seen on real estate sites, 3D shopping solutions, a kind of 3D metaverse, and own various virtual worlds and games in the consumer sector as well. But what we're in today, and what I really want to show you, is a platform that we've built over the last 5 years called LearnBrite. And you know, it's something pretty novel, it's pretty exciting, and in these times it's being heavily adopted. But it comes from a philosophy around learning and training. Now, way back, I used to do a thing called CBT, or computer-based training, in the days of CD-ROMs, multimedia, kiosks, those sorts of things. If any of you remember that or are old enough to have been involved in that industry. And I've owned learning management system companies and serviced very large enterprises, and got a good understanding for the various types of learners that organizations have and how wide and varied that can be. And specifically, that the technology savviness of learners can just be very different. So one of my first, and this is kind of an interesting story actually, my first computer-based training project was with a chocolate factory in Australia. And I got to work on the factory floor with people that operate the machinery, made the chocolate and all of that processes. And they had a rule at the factory that you could eat as much chocolate as you want there, but you weren't allowed to take any off-site. So I spent as many months as I could working on that project. But it really taught me a lot. We had people with poor English skills. We had people that were really resistant to computers, didn't like them. And we did all we could to make the experiences really engaging and palatable to the factory floor staff. They included removing keyboards, doing everything with touchscreens and voiceovers, nice animations and graphics, and it became something that was really successful. And then it kind of set the tone for what I was doing later in this sort of stuff. But the LearnBrite platform is specifically built from the ground up, not as a game or not as a entertainment tool, but a way to take today's existing training, which is typically slideshow based with quizzes or video based training, and allow the people that produce that training, instructional designers, to be able to create immersive, interactive experiences for learners that tend to engage them in the way that they need to be engaged in this newer market. Everyone who's digital native and uses all the tools online are used to just how powerful they are, how polished the tools are, and how engaging they are. And then they move into the corporate environment to start their learning and training, and they're suddenly thrown back into the dark ages of reading, here, read these 50-page PDFs or browse through this 40-page PowerPoint presentation, and we hope that you've learned everything you need for the job. But yeah, most of the large organizations are seeing a huge drop-off in completions. So people aren't completing the training. They're not paying attention in classroom training either. It's just becoming a problem. And so the type of the way learners learn has changed. The expectations they have that they get from this beautiful apps and internet and ecosystems that we see is not translating into the workplace. And it's really expensive to try and build things to that quality as well. Instructional designers don't have enough time as it is. So that's why we built this platform, LearnBrite, which actually allows you to build all sorts of both multi-user experiences. So we're all in an auditorium together right now, and that's a social space, but the platform's also used with virtual bots and experiences that are pre-scripted. But they allow, and this is the really key thing, super, super key to the difference in training here is moving to something that's user-centered, where the user is at the center of the experience and they're learning by doing, instead of being somebody just consuming information. And I use a term that people seem to like, and I don't know where I picked it up or whether I made it up, but I call the type of training that we do in these immersive environments lean forward learning, where someone's paying attention, leaning forward, making decisions and changing the outcome of an experience because of the decisions they make. And that way each experience is a unique memory for that person. Whereas the traditional experience, learning is what I call lean back learning. So you lean back, you consume, you watch a video or you click next, next, next on a slideshow until you get to a quiz question and try and pick the least incorrect answer. So, this is the real pivot I'm looking for in the e-learning industry to help instructional designers and knowledge workers really start building something that's palatable to learners, puts them at the center of the experience, and they remember what they've done. They walk away having done something, and that persists longer. It sticks with them as hopefully behavioral change.
So Danny, this is from the standpoint of, to your point, this is a very engaging, very different environment for us to be in. I mean, I've played in that world of Second Life and so on, but this is a very nicely tailored situation. So if you can give us a sense of if I had the skills to build something like this and using your tool and maybe using you and your folks, what would it take me to build this auditorium?
Well, it's pretty easy. In fact, the whole platform comes with templates. So if you want an auditorium, you just create a new space that's an empty auditorium and start to fill it up with your content. As you see here, I'm adding some chairs on the stage because I might want to sit down instead of being standing up the whole time. So you can add to a templated room, whether it's a conference room, a meeting room, a seminar room, expo hall, a classroom, a workspace. Then you can start adding your own furniture to it, your own resources. I mean, if anyone wants to put a URL of their website in the chat at the bottom there, please do, and we can show you just how easy it is to add that website into the space as well. You can do that also for videos and other content. It's super easy. So you can start to pull in all the resources that you're used to using within the 3D environment quickly and easily. And right. Yeah, we also integrate with search engines of 3D content. Most people don't know this, but just like you have image search engines and video search engines, there are search engines for 3D content as well. So we're at this kind of critical mass point where there's enough content out there that you can really find whatever you're looking for. And so we integrate with Google has their own search engine called Google Poly, which is full of 3D content created by users, most of it commercially free to use. There's others like Sketchfab, Microsoft has one, I think. So there's a bunch of content out there that you can just use immediately in building your productions. Really, it saves you a lot of time, money, and you don't need to get 3D modelers involved. And you certainly, for building these type of experiences, don't need to get programmers involved. If you can write, let's say a PowerPoint presentation, you can start to create characters and interactions just by writing plain old text. And I can show you that in a moment.
Yeah. So you'd mentioned, and I'm kind of pointing my camera or at least my view to the screen that you were talking about behind us. So you've got the ability to bring other media into the environment. and use that in a very normal person, PowerPoint presentation, a video of some sort, maybe even a training video, where you could then use this setting to say, hey, audience, we just saw a video, let's talk about it. And there is a voice situation within this context. We're just using GoToMeeting right now because we're recording it. But within Danny's environment is the ability to speak between the two avatars. And so as a result of that, it's, to me, it's a self-contained environment. You don't need a GoToMeeting or a Zoom or anything of that nature, and you do have this interaction going on. So I see incoming video. You're about to receive a video stream.
Yeah, click OK. And
I'm trying to find the OK in here. My apologies. There we go. It was hidden behind there. Okay, so we're now going to see that on, let's see, where would you like me to go with that? Is it on one of the boards already, or will
it
be?
should be. It might be. Maybe it's not.
Okay. No problem.
But yeah, those boards behind you can be used for video streaming, for
right.
for either webcam, or it can be used for sharing your desktop or an application. So that's all built into the platform's capabilities. But we do also integrate with Zoom and WebEx and other tools for doing conferencing. So if you're happy to use those tools, you can use those, or use the ones that are built into the platform. And that's for social experiences, getting into meetings together. But that's only 50% of the usage of the platform. Is that the other half usage of the platform is for virtual experiences with bots and virtual characters.
So let's go one route, and then I'll come back, if you don't mind, and we'll talk a little about the kind of experiential perspective that you can have here. So this is a gathering place. It could be a one-on-one, could be many to many, if you will. You could be lecturing. You could be watching stuff on the wall, if you will, videos, PowerPoints, and so on. What kind of limitations, if any? You mentioned that you've integrated with Zoom or GoTo or whatever. So I could bring whatever I'm in a digital fashion to this environment and display it on there. So I'm really not limited to anything else that's a media-based situation, a PDF, a PowerPoint, a video, etc. Right?
Correct, and that makes it really powerful to link in anything that you might have on the web into the space. You can put in links to images, links to websites, and just pin them into the environment. In fact, there's an interesting article from Firefox here that I'm looking at the moment, and I can simply.
I'll just turn my perspective around here just so we can see that. Is it going to be on the screen behind me?
It'll be. I'll drop into the space in front of us. So just a moment.
Oh,
okay. Here we go.
And I think a lot of people didn't recognize me because I don't have my gray hair in the avatar, but we'll talk about that in a moment. So let's see. I put it down over here so I can do perspective on that. Yeah. Okay, here we go. Perfect.
So there we go. I've just added a link to an article that I was reading on something from Mozilla about monetizing the web, and I can just drop that into the scene, and it appears for everyone to see. So
it becomes an object that you've done that in bringing it in, right? Okay.
Yeah, it's a link I put into the chat, and then it appears in there.
Okay.
Now,
Gotcha. Perfect.
There's something I forgot to mention earlier that is really important with this whole solution, is that it works on every single device. So as an author, you don't have to worry if somebody's using this on a mobile phone, on a tablet, a Chromebook, a laptop, a desktop computer, or any of the VR and augmented reality headsets that are in the market. It will work with them as well. But as an author, you don't have to care about it. So it's almost like responsive design, which means your website will run on every device. This is taking that to a whole nother level, because if I come in and join you using a virtual reality headset and hand controllers, I can wave my arms around in real time within the environment, and everything I see is life-size in front of me. But all of us here are probably attending via a flat screen device, be it a desktop or a laptop. And so we're seeing everything as kind of a world in front of us. But this whole world, when you put a VR headset on, becomes surrounding you. And that creates an even more impactful experience.
So I think what you've said here, and I certainly want to open this up to the audience, that there's both watching the screen and those that are participating in the auditorium. But as you said, this is a very device independent, which includes the fact that you may have like an Oculus or something VR tool that you might be wearing and using your phone to get into this environment. I suspect the I hate to say it commands, but if you will, the motions that you can go through here on my laptop, I could do that on my phone, but I would see it in a slightly different aspect. Would I be seeing it through the eyes of the avatar, or would I be seeing something like I'm seeing now on the screen?
Well, you see it through the eyes of the avatar. So you can actually try that out. In the toolbar on the top right-hand side, there's a goggles icon, and
Gotcha.
that switches between first person and third person perspective.
Okay, so for those of you who are not in the auditorium, I am now looking through the eyes of my avatar. I think I'm saying, yeah, hello, Scott, how are you? You're sitting next to me. By the way, this chair is most uncomfortable. I think I'm gonna go try on this seat over here if I can. Do I just click on the object?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me see if I can do that. Yeah, it doesn't want to take me to the. I was going to stand where Michelle is now, but that's okay. You can stay right there, Michelle. Okay, I'll get out of my goggle mode here for a moment. That's quite interesting to see. So, a very quick question about the three-letter or three-word perspective that's here. It almost sounds like just 3 words, perspective. Is this what you've done here for the name, Legacy, flat silence guest? Is that something you generate just for a person who's not necessarily put their name in as an avatar?
Yeah, I think that's worth covering. I mean, with most conferencing platforms, and we've seen this in the news recently with so many people moving to online conferencing, there's been articles on what they call Zoom bombing, which is people are jumping into Zoom presentations or meetings or classrooms and putting in inappropriate content or saying things in the chat. And that's because people haven't been locking down their conferences to stop people who aren't authenticated from entering. So you'll know if you've attended online conferences before or conference calls, you know a lot of them are open. As long as you have the access details, you can jump right in and nobody's going to stop you. So that is something that provides you with great accessibility, so everyone can just jump straight into a meeting, and everyone who's in the virtual space at the moment just followed a link and you were in the space. It was that simple. Yep. So there's no registration, no barriers, frictionless. There's nothing to install either. So this is all just like sharing a link to a YouTube video for a friend to watch. They can jump into an experience the same way. But the platform does offer levels of locking things down. So you can have it invite only by email. You can lock rooms. You can do all sorts of permissions and controls to create more gates before people get into it, including going through other third-party payment systems before you can get in. We integrate with tools like LearnBrite and Meetup and other tools like that. But because we wanted this event to be super open, we wanted people to just jump in. And there is the ability to add your name when you go through the initial avatar choice component. But for those that just, again, you want instant access, you want people to get in and see whatever it is you're presenting. We have a default name there. And instead of having person 1, person 2, person 3, which is pretty dry and boring, and as you'll notice from all the name tags, the different colors, we try to add a bit more life and excitement and interest into the platform by default, so without people necessarily having to do anything. So that's where these interesting name combinations come from. When we first had these name combinations, actually, we had a few words in there, and if you got the right word combination, it was kind of a bit offensive or distressing or not quite right sounding. So we had our team actually go through all the word combinations to create names that will in no way could offend anyone, unless anyone's offended by, what is that, flat silence guest?
And, yes, and I like Swarovski. I don't see the rest of the name tag. I just says Swarovski bot.
Oh, that's actually a bot I've added to the stage. She's not a real attendee. That's a virtual character. So anyone in the space at the moment can actually click on her and she'll speak to you and say, hello, I just added that text while we were here. So you can instantly create characters. They animate when they're speaking automatically. So you don't need to be an animator or a 3D modeler. You just decorate a character in the clothes you want and then type the text of what you want them to say and a gesture they might do. In this case, the Swarovski bot waves her hand, says hello.
I just did that, Danny, and it was perfect. So we got it on film now. It's great. I want to say that, so here's an interesting perspective, and it's just a very selfish, egotistical on my behalf. I could have a room full of people, if you will, that I've generated to listening to my speeches. This will be quite a deal. I have to impress my grandkids. Look at the room that Grandpa's got. Anyway.
This is actually a real thing for virtual people. A lot of people are very, very scared of public speaking.
Yes.
And some people would rather die than go out on stage and do public speaking. And this is used, VR is used as a tool for getting people familiar to that. So if you have a crowd of people in front of you, you start to get the feeling of it. And if you put a virtual reality headset on, suddenly you're in their life size and you're seeing all these other people. And with bots or virtual characters, you can get them to be disinterested and look away. That sort of stuff is going to give you signals that you can learn from for virtual speaking. So learning to speak in public is actually something virtual reality has been used for many years.
That's a really great perspective. I'm going to say, certainly, since we're all, shall we say, just going through the same thing globally, and as you'd mentioned, Danny, you're still in quarantine in Spain. I hope everything is still well and good for you. But in all honesty, this is maybe the next new wave of the conferences that were being canceled all year long. And I don't have any vendors in the audience, but I may just suggest that those who put on the conferences ought to consider an environment that you could build easily enough that would allow, I hate to say, let's put it the same way we normally do, rows and rows of vendor booths and blah, blah, blah. I think we would be very creative about how we do this, but I've seen virtual conferences where I click on a link that takes me to a virtual booth where there's an avatar standing there, and rarely is there a person even behind it to talk to me. They'll just show a presentation. I think this offers up some significant differences in how we would do things. We're close to being there, but not quite having to be there in a conference. And I think there's some great opportunities that we potentially, I would love to experiment with that with some of the organizations I belong to. And for those of you sitting out there, if you got product demos or you have user conferences or whatever you do, this is a great opportunity, I think, to bypass this idea of travel and time away and expenses to do something that still brings people together. So this, have you seen an uptick at all, Danny, in your world about using things like this to overcome what we've seen to be as the obstacles?
Well, actually, since the lockdowns have started, well, we were already on a really great growth curve beforehand, but as soon as the lockdowns started happening, we've seen incredible growth. One of my other businesses has grown from 5 million users a day to 7 million users a day. And that's just, and the weekends have disappeared. If you look in the graphs, there's normally a downturn each weekend when the services are not being used. And then suddenly, there's this giant upward trend but no dip in the weekends. So, I'm not sure if that's people are working on the weekends or they're just spending more time looking at different things, but it seems to be, an incredible shift. And I'm sure that's happening across the whole online industry. Not just our particular field, but we're getting, conferences with, 100, 200, 300 attendees replacing their their physical conferences because the events have been cancelled. They've got the budget. People are, well, let's call it, people are a captive audience at the moment. So these sorts of events are getting good attendance as well. People are willing to go to events and take part in them because they're kind of trapped at home. So it's an interesting time, and I think the more engaging the presentations and the experiences can be, the better the outcome is. But as soon as you get past it, a lot of people are trying to do video conferencing, which works really well up to maybe 40 people maximum. And once you get past that number, it's really hard to have an audience with everyone being on video, or you end up kind of a bit like our call here with GoToMeeting. I see a bunch of name tags for people, and I have no idea who those people are, and I'm not interacting with them in the GoToMeeting session. They don't have a character for me or a connection. But in the 3D space, I'm seeing all these different avatars with their different clothing choices, where they're choosing to stand, if they're engaged or not. Some are looking around, some are moving around. these are all indicators for me that there are people behind this.
Outstanding. So let me stop my chattering and ask the audience, both in the GoToMeeting and those in the auditorium as well, who are hopefully in the GoToMeeting, which is where you're going to hear all the voices and stuff. Any questions of Danny, any observations, anything you want to offer up? Because I've got a number of other things I'd like to go to, but let's talk amongst ourselves here. What are you seeing? What do you like, and what do you think the problems are, if any?
Hey, it's Eric Nove. Yeah, I mean, I think it's the timing of this is crazy because it's what we use almost every day, or what we should be using every day with our environment that we're in. So, but I actually love it. I think it has a lot of good use, and I can absolutely see this picking up as more and more the capability that we're seeing in terms of technology versus actually physically going somewhere. Obviously, over time is going to change. So this is something that well developed, and I think it's important that it's out there and it can be used.
Well, I'm hoping that everybody in the audience will take their thoughts back to their own companies or their own organizations and associations and say, hey guys, I thought that was really, really cool. I'll put the link out there in the YouTube world and let you guys go at it. But I think this is a biggie. I'm going to be writing a blog, Danny, as well, to put it out there, because I think it's not only timely to Eric's point, but I think it's most definitely a mindset changer, if you will. Other perspectives, anyone?
Hi, this is Michelle.
Well, let's do Noreen, then Michelle, if you don't mind. I love the fact that we have comments. Good.
Sorry, Michelle. Yes, this is Noreen, and I could definitely see the use of this, and I think the room setting is going to be key because so oftentimes we're in smaller groups or smaller teams, sub-teams. Definitely being able to present different facts and figures along the way, as well as different configurations, I think is important. I'm thinking about my daughter, who is an engineering consultant, and I think because they cannot travel now, that I would love this to show this to her. I could see product support and product demonstration as being probably one of the main uses for myself.
Yeah, and that's a great example, actually. One of our clients, they have very expensive radiation detection machinery, and it's not only large and super expensive, they can't really bring it all to trade shows. So that's what they actually do. They do it in VR, and they bring a few virtual reality headsets to the trade shows, and people can actually explore all of their offerings that you could not normally get into a trade show booth. And now they're moving all that online, of course, because of the current situation. And they already have those assets ready to go, which, yeah, it makes it to do product presentations and collaboration really accessible.
Hi, this is Michelle. The question that I had, and I might have missed it, so I apologize, but having taught adult learning courses before, one of the things that we do is we have breakout rooms. And I was wondering if is that an opportunity here? So say you invite a group of 30 people to come for a course, but then you want them to kind of go away and discuss as a group and bring back their thoughts. Is that a possibility here?
Absolutely. Normally, we take people through a kind of campus tour, which takes you to many different spaces and examples, galleries, self-paced learning environments, 360 video environments, and captures of real locations with 360 images. And across a whole campus or a world, you can message people, you can interact with, whisper to them. In fact, anywhere in this environment, you can click on another person and whisper to them. But you can then send them to breakout rooms together. There's all sorts of abilities there for managing people as a host.
Thank you.
Oh, and I forgot to mention, it's also got dial-in support. So for people that are attending by phone, of course, they can just dial in.
The other thing is there a quick user guide or a quick kind kind of admin user setup kind of recommendations, anything that you would have?
Well, the platform's pretty intuitive. Creating a space is like using a template in Microsoft Word or PowerPoint. You know, say I want this room, and then it exists. Then you go into it and you add furnishings. You can see I'm adding all sorts of items to the space while we're here. And it's just a matter of looking in the search engine for 3D items, then you drag and drop them where you want. You create multiple spaces and link them together in a world, and then people can navigate from space to space to space. The thing that probably from and as we've seen here, everyone's taken a seat in the environment, so the participation's been pretty easy. We do have guides, a whole academy on how to host events as well, but generally the participation is pretty intuitive. And for hosting real events, it's similar to all the conferencing tools you might have used before for doing screen share or video share. The application of the technology becomes more interesting when you use it for self-paced learning, when you're creating independent scenarios that someone will go in and play at their own leisure and interact with virtual characters. Then that becomes more of a thing where some skills needed to be learned in order to program the character. Well, not program, but get the characters to speak, get them to react to different decisions you make. And so that's probably the area where we find instructional designers need a bit more onboarding. But for people that are used to running a Skype or a GoToMeeting or any of those type of events, the platform is very familiar to them.
Just know
Excuse
if I
me,
finally
Danny?
came back. Oh yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah. Hey, Danny, I've got a question. This is Joe. You mentioned environments, and I don't know if I missed it, but here we are in a configuration that's an auditorium. Do you have other configurations that are like a conference room or a breakout room? And maybe you spoke to this, but I just didn't.
Yep.
Do you
So
have an example?
Well, actually, if you go, I put a link in the chat in the space to mootup.com. So if you just click on that link, that's where you can actually set up your own room, your own meeting room. You'll also notice it has links to starting your own Zoom meeting or WebEx, but you don't need to use Zoom or WebEx. The Moot platform has everything built in. You just click on a room and then claim it as your own, and then you've got a room to run your event in, whether it's a virtual working space or a expo hall or a conference room. And they're just some of the templates we have. We've got many. And on top of that, it's all open standards. So if you want to get somebody else to design a space for you, you can do that. And just import the standard object or 3D object into a blank template, and that can be your new room. So you can create custom rooms as well.
Exactly.
Thanks.
So Danny, I was going to ask you, if you don't mind, if you've got an object that represents your business card or something, if you don't mind tossing that out there, because I know a couple of people would probably want to catch you. I'll certainly put out an email to this group to how to reach you, if you will, and it's LearnBrite.com.
Yeah, I mean, we can put that in the chat here, and also there's the option to book a time to get a full demo tour of a campus there as well. And I recommend that. It'll be quite an experience, but it'll also open your eyes to all the things that are now possible with 3D on the web generally. So yeah, I encourage you to do that.
So any other questions about what we're seeing in a general sense for Danny? Because I do have some additional, shall we say, questions about how to go about this then. Okay, so Danny, it's always put our guests on the spot type of thing, but you've done a wonderful job to date. So I've got an IT department and they love this kind of stuff, but they'd like to learn the tool set. Is that something you provide in terms of the ability to learn how to use your environment, how to build the objects, and how to really tune this to the perspective of, here's my company. And I'm going to say this as a possibility. I don't think it's a great use, but I'll put it to you in terms of easing people into it. And that is create my own office, the floor I work with, and put all the people in the cubicles like I do at my real life, my real workplace. Not the greatest use, but here's Scott next door to me in my cubicle, and I can go around the corner and talk to Scott. I want to move my avatar. I want to go over and talk to him specifically in the chat or something like that. There's just, the kind of that, let me ease you from your comfort zone right this moment to the next step. And then maybe the next step is I'm actually doing this from home, and I've got my own world that I'm creating, but I'm communicating with people. I mean, we just need to ease people out of their comfort zone into this new world. But I'm sure you've probably had to do it in steps. I'm curious, talking about how do I build my own environments, and secondly, how have you moved people through the process of going from real world to virtual world?
That's a super interesting topic, actually, because as we see, we're all in a conference room together, and you think, well, we've got virtual reality here. We could be in any space we wanted, and we could be in limitless space as well. There's no limits. So why are we creating rooms and enclosed environments that replicate what we have in the real world? And the very simple answer is marketing, that people like what they're familiar with, and that's what onboards them into starting to use the platforms. But the real potential of the platforms starts to come from doing things that are outside what our traditional expectations and thoughts are. And this is where the platforms become super creative and interesting. Now, this happens a lot in the consumer-based virtual worlds and games where people are doing things out of the norm. So you can see some extraordinary things happening out there in the consumer land. And I think some of that will start to filter into the way businesses do things. They'll be more creative, they'll be more engaging with what they produce, especially when it comes to things like expos and ways you present your products. You don't need to have everything in a room. You can really do something quite more extravagant, like presenting, let's say it's heavy construction equipment out in the field. So you're actually out there in the field with it instead of, it's inside a room somewhere. And you can see everything at scale. It might be a big earth moving piece of equipment, and you can see it at scale. You can climb up on it, get inside it, and really experience it as it would be. So there are a lot of opportunities there. In regards to your virtual office idea, it's actually what the templates on Moodle have. There's a co-working space which is designed for that. And so you can have multiple places within the environment. It has 2 floors. You can go to the floor above, have your own virtual office, move the furniture around, set it up exactly as you want. And if it's actually something that you want your real office to be replicated, you'd need to get somebody to scan that or model it. But now even traditional mobile phones are able to scan these environments and use them. We work with a company called Matterport that have a scanner for environments, and you can use their models in this, replace this conference room with a 3D scan of a real place, and then layer in all your digital assets on top of that. Or another really cheap and easy way to get started is just to use your mobile phone and take a 360-degree panoramic image. These can be used in our platform as well, and they're often used as a quick, easy way to grab an existing location and put it into the environment. And that can be a multi-user thing. So you could link a number of 360 images together of different parts of your office, and have virtual meetings in each of them. But I'd like to highlight how we can start to break down that traditional way of looking at meeting rooms and start to look at doing things that are less physically linked. So we created an add-on for a tool called Slack. Some of you might be familiar with Slack. It's essentially a chat tool that has many different channels or topics. And so your teams discuss things in a particular channel that's topically relevant, and it won't bother anybody else. And you can jump into a topic and add to it. And at the same time, you can direct message people, so get into private meetings very quickly, have little discussions. So we use that in our team a lot. And we also have, every morning we have virtual reality meetings. Everyone is standing up in their VR headset, and we're having a face-to-face meeting. For the last 2 years, we've been doing that in our platform. It's been a lot of fun. In fact, a week ago, we had a birthday party for one of the staff. It was pretty interesting. But the point is that with our use of Slack and our use of the 3D tools, we create an add-on, so you can just type a command in any channel and it'll just instantly create a meeting room in that channel. And so the team can get in, talk, collaborate, and the room has all the stuff left in it the same way it was from the day before, documents pinned in there, experiments, other content. And you can also do the same, sending one command to someone personally and have a virtual office. I have my virtual office and I invite my staff in to have meetings all through the day. So we get on a call, video call, screen share, and my office is pretty nice. It's full of interesting experiments. My CTO's office is full of quirky, half-broken 3D experiments, but it's a fun place to visit. So in this way, they don't need to be physically connected. They're connected by this idea of channels, which is a kind of metaphor that is already known in these other tools and used. The same is used in Microsoft Teams, by the way. So this model is being distributed and many millions of people are familiar with it. And we're just layering the 3D on top of that. So you don't need to, so Slack and that, our tool is kind of our virtual office. It's our virtual headquarters. But all of the spaces are kind of unlinked. You just jump into them when you need to.
So I want to ask the audience in general, as you look at this and think about it, where do you think the possibilities are that you'd like to see, if you will, in your organization or even your personal life? In all honesty, that's the one thing, Denny, we didn't really speak about this. There's absolutely nothing wrong with creating a personal space with your friends. I mean, literally. I mean, this will, in a sense, replace the Facebook, maybe even the LinkedIn world and all that. This is a much more conducive place in which to, share. I can't say it any better. I think it's just the best I've ever seen in sharing things.
Yeah, I think that's the way that we're headed. I think we'll get more and more realism as things go along. You can achieve more in game engines to create avatars that look photorealistic, but what we're working on here is via web browsers. And so there's less resources available. And we're also targeting people with old notebook computers in organizations using legacy browsers like Internet Explorer 11 and things like that. So we optimize for the widest possible audience. But there are things being built, and Microsoft acquired a company called Altspace VR, which is exactly for those consumer-based kind of entertainment, meeting, socializing. It's called social VR in the industry. And Facebook was launching a thing called Facebook Horizons, which is, again, another consumer-based virtual world for jumping in and having fun with people. And these things have been acting as kind of pseudo meeting spaces. There was an education conference done in Altspace VR, for example. It's not the most ideal conferencing platform. These are being used because they're available. And so people are using those to experiment and start to get involved in doing these sorts of things. But as I said, with the privacy concerns and being able to make sure people don't jump in on your meetings, all those things are considerations that we're dealing with on an enterprise level. We've been operating this for 5 years with Fortune 500 companies, so it's very robust and very conscious of data privacy and security. So those things do come into play. But I think there's more than enough scope for the consumer-based virtual worlds to have events and exciting things happen in them, and also to use these enterprise tools for collaboration and team building as well. I was talking to someone only this week about creating virtual retreats in our platform. So some way for people to jump in and do team building exercises that you would normally go out, into the woods and start climbing rope ladders and things like that. It wouldn't be exactly like that, but at least team building exercises. Perhaps one company was talking about having a giant snakes and ladders board on the ground, and people would have to move to different parts of the board. So you're kind of playing the game in real life, like playing with giant chess pieces. These sorts of interesting team collaboration exercises that just get people to play with each other and enjoy, having experiences together that aren't necessarily all about the business, but they're about team bonding. So, I hope that actually the virtual retreat project goes ahead, because I can't wait to see what that company is planning to do around that. They're an events company.
Yeah, that's a great thing. So, anyone out in the audience have I always have something to say, as you all know.
Hey, Novus Bruce.
Please.
Novus Bruce. Hey, Danny, how do you price this?
What are you willing to spend? No.
Send me your wallet. No.
Oh, I'm loaded, man.
Yeah, it's kind of the prices are very, very simple. We started off trying to do a pricing model that was aligned with much the way that other enterprise software prices itself per user and per experience, all of those things. We found that we had enough friction getting people to understand and learn this new way of doing things. And so we quickly scrapped all of those pricing models, and we just wanted to remove every point of friction we can so that adoption occurs. So we now got a flat pricing model, very, very simple. There's 3 different tiers. A freelancer can get on the platform and start building unlimited experiences for unlimited attendees for $99 a month. And then it goes all the way up to an enterprise plan, which is, again, super reasonable for 10 authors and, again, unlimited events, unlimited spaces, and that's $25K US per year, and that's our top plan. So it's very affordable. It's akin to creating a good learning module can cost you 15 to 20K. So we know that that's a price point that people can just nod.
Do you have as part of your outfit do consulting around this, or when you get the platform, you're basically on your own? Any kind of advice around that?
Oh, we do a ton of support. So there's a 30-day free trial for the platform, which includes 2 one-hour training calls, which we walk you through the system. And there's also, when you sign up for the trial, you get into a room with a bot that teaches you anyway. So that's all part of it. And we have an academy where we have tons of resources, but we've also got free email support, chat support, and our own customer Slack group where we assist people. So our focus is on creating subscription revenue for the platform and focusing on making it the best tool it can be. But in the meantime, while we build up scale, we've got LearnBrite Studios, which assist clients to get their projects through and make sure that whoever's taking the platform for a run ends up looking like a hero. So because we understand in larger organizations, the people that are making these decisions, they've got their reputation on the line, trying new technology. We want them to have the best experience. So we build with them in LearnBrite Studios on an engagement basis, and then they get all the project files kind of as a template to build future experiences on that. And something else worth mentioning is that we're not VC backed. We've grown organically over 5 years. We're profitable, and the way that we build the platform, its features are sometimes somebody needs something new in the platform. We build it at cost, so we don't make a profit out of it. But that feature then goes into the platform for everyone to benefit. So, yeah, that's interesting, and it's worked really well.
Right. One final question: if you use this kind of as a pure training platform, and you needed to do some assessment, are there any assessment tools or capabilities that come kind of out of the box?
Yeah, there's a ton. So, I'll mention this, that there's the ability to capture every experience that we show. Even this auditorium can be exported as a SCORM module, which is a package that goes into learning management systems. So you can deploy this, put it into your learning management system. It automatically creates avatars for the people when they go to that training module. And the score they get in the 3D environment is sent back to the LMS as part of its standard learning management system reports without you having to do anything. So there's no integration, no IT involvement, and because it's all web-based, it's going to run on everyone's device, nothing to install. So that's part of it. But then on top of that, we have a whole gamification platform that tracks where users go, how long they spend in the rooms, and most importantly, the content they interact with. And based on their interactions can trigger rewards for the users. So if I watched a video in this room, I could get a new t-shirt or hat for my avatar that everyone else would see. Or if I, finish, you can also embed 2D SCORM modules into the 3D environment and get a score from them. So I could do a SCORM module in the room, get a score over 80%, and I could use that to unlock another room for me to visit, or maybe give me 500 points on the leaderboard. So that's built into the platform as well. So lots of ways to score and assess. Oh,
that's great. Well, thanks for all that content. Very helpful.
Outstanding. Well, I see it's about 6 minutes to close. Let me ask: are there other questions? Any observation? Again, what we do, Danny, is, and you've heard it from me personally, but I'd love to hear it from anybody in the audience. we like to give you some feedback. What do we think about this? What kind of obstacles do we think what does it take to bring you into our environment? So, folks, you want to give Danny some feedback? They all went silent on me.
Well, this is
Please
Bruce.
do.
This is Bruce. I think it looks great. I mean, I think it's, in terms, especially in the new normal, to Nova's point earlier, I mean, who knows what it's going to look like going forward. But, you do see people kind of pushed into online environments in ways they never thought they would be. And so this, I think, is just, looks like a great tool to be able to, to take advantage of some of that and provide some high quality interaction, when you're sitting in your house by yourself.
Any other comments? I always like to toss my 2.5 cents back out there, so I think I've got some spare change again today. So Danny, you and I talked before, and I had spent some time in the world of Second Life doing things. What you have as a I'll call it a standardized platform beats the heck out of it, because Second Life was a client server based perspective, had a lot of problems around security. IT had problems with it. Not everybody could load it, all kinds of stuff. You've solved the problem from the standpoint that it's device independent. So I congratulate you for that. That move alone it obviates some problems. So, folks, I'd love you to think about, has anybody done the old, our plane just crashed in the mountains and there's only so many survivors and we have to pick up as much as we can carry to take, what are we going to take with us? That kind of scenario, team building with decision making, leadership and other things, that can be done so easily in this situation. I've also had the opportunity to build something where people would do like a capture the flag type of concept as a team, and then they would go out physically and drive tanks and trucks and all kinds of strange things out there, military vehicles. It was just a blast, and you were doing it from an avatar. And like I said, you showed me the goggle. I can see what I'm seeing through the eyes of the avatar. All of these things and the interaction with other avatars changes everybody's perspective and probably opens up some perspectives of them as personalities to interact a little better with their teammates than they would in a real sense. And I say that, Danny, you mentioned it earlier, people may not feel good about public speaking, but addressing a bunch of avatars out there, in all honesty, maybe it erases that fear of being in front of a crowd. There's lots of rethinking that needs to be done to go into something like this that really opens up its possibilities, but it is limitless, truly limitless. So, Danny, I congratulate you and LearnBrite for doing a phenomenal job, if you will, and I love your pricing, by the way. very, very reasonable and very smart. And from the standpoint of looking at the offsets of what I do today in the real world, vis-a-vis what it would cost to bring this world in there, and the remote worker situation, both now and in the future, I think you're sitting on a gold mine. I think and there's got to be tons and tons and tons of things that people are going to be building that can be reused and repurposed. So this world will grow. Let's put it that way. There's no doubt in my mind. Any other comments or anything else? If I could get my avatar to clap, I saw yours dancing earlier. That we got that on film. So.
Well, yeah, there's a little smiley face icon down the bottom in the chat bar, and you can click there, and there's applause.
Well, folks, let me see if I can find that one. Oh, yes, there we go. Shall we give Danny a big hand on this one?
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah, let's do it. All
Thanks,
right, very nice. Again, thank you all for joining us. For those of you who braved it into the auditorium, you can pick up your prizes at the door as you're leaving. Yeah, right. Bottles of wine get you through the rest of the day. Again, thank you all. As always, I can't do this by myself. You guys as a group have just been phenomenal as a technology group to keep things going, keeping the vendors on this. And Danny, thank you very, very much for joining us. I have a feeling we're going to call you back, because I think we want to rethink a little bit and maybe come back here and maybe see how easily the tool set is in terms of using and watching you build a couple of things. So
I would love to organize something where we give people a tour of the virtual campus and take them to many different places.
We'd love to.
It'll be a little more ad hoc, but it would be a lot of fun.
Okay, well, we'll work on that, folks. you heard it from Danny and Nov. You're going to get another tour of this place and visit places we probably thought we wouldn't do normally. Again, stay safe in Spain. Everyone in the audience, please stay safe, and our well wishes to all of you. Take care, and
Thanks, Nov.
We'll go from here.
Thanks, Danny.
Take care now, everyone. All right.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, everyone.